The location is Shandong and Liaoning, wealthy provinces in the northeast of China. For a long time, everything was calm there. The provinces were developing steadily, and then came a project that would disrupt the region's stability for years to come. The Chinese have planned to dig up the seabed and build a passage with a total length of 76 miles. Out of that, 56 miles will go underwater. To put it in perspective, that's more than twice as long as the current record-holding tunnel. Millions of cubic feet of rock and soil will be removed, tunneling machines will be deployed, and thousands of workers will be involved. In short, the scale is enormous. Engineers are thrilled and eagerly awaiting the project's launch, but others, they're expecting disaster. In fact, one of the most ambitious projects in history might be canceled altogether. It's that dangerous. So what's really going on there? Let's find out today. The big problems of big provinces. So here we are in the provinces of Shandong and Liaoning. They're located right next to each other, yet traveling or shipped goods between them is a real challenge. For example, if you go by car, you'll have to take a huge detour along the coast, going all the way around the Bohai Sea. That's about 745 to 1,110 miles, roughly 16 to 18 hours on the road. And that's the best case scenario, because this region is a traffic magnet. On one side, a province with 45 million people, on the other, one with 100 million. And yes, Beijing is nearby too. Still, nature gave people a small bonus that helps avoid the long drive. Between the two provinces lies the Bohai Strait, which stretches 102 to 115 miles across. Naturally, the Chinese made use of it and built a ferry route. People can easily move back and forth, and there are even ferries that carry entire trains. Sounds great? Not really. The crossing usually takes around 6.5 to 7 hours. However, the strait often becomes completely impassable. The biggest problem is fog. It appears suddenly, most often in spring and autumn when cold northern air meets moist sea air. Then the strait's wrapped in a white wall. Visibility drops to just a few dozen feet. And neither radar nor lighthouses can help much against this veil. The risk of collision or drifting off course is too high. So the ferries stop running, and the ports of Yantai and Dalian fill up with cars and passengers waiting for the sun to burn away the thick mist. In some years, there are up to 50 such foggy days, nearly 2 months of interruptions. And if you think with modern technology, fog shouldn't be a problem, you're mistaken. For example, in 2025 near Bali, a ferry sank because of fog and waves. 29 people went missing. And the worst part is, at some point, they even stopped the search. The fog and waves made it impossible. Or take a case from the UK. In 2018, a ferry collided with a yacht in heavy fog and ran aground near the Isle of Wight. So yeah, it's a serious issue in the Bohai Strait. But it's not the only one. This is one of the few places in China where the water actually freezes in winter. When temperatures drop to 14 to 5 degrees Fahrenheit, the coast is covered with ice, and farther out you can see floating ice floes several inches thick. For regular ferries, that's a deadly environment. Propellers jam with ice shards, hulls get microcracks, and navigation becomes impossible. When the ice is especially thick, traffic stops for weeks. In some winters, it stops for a whole month. Icebreakers help, but there aren't enough of them, so the strait is often closed. In the summer, storms and typhoons take over. Even though the Bohai Strait is north of the tropics, it still gets the echoes of cyclones from the South China Sea. They bring gale-force winds, waves up to 16 feet, and storm surges that raise the water level by over 3 feet, flooding the piers. In October 2024, for instance, Chinese meteorologists reported 18-foot waves and a complete shutdown of ferry traffic for several days. Almost the same story repeats nearly every summer. So the Bohai Strait ferry route remains fast but unreliable. Fog, ice, and storms turn it into a seasonal lottery. The weather decides who gets to cross and who stays waiting on the shore. And the most obvious solution seems to be a bridge. Sure, no one's ever built a bridge 112 miles long, but come on, the Chinese can do wonders, can't they? Yet if you pitch this idea to a Chinese military officer, he'll tell you right away it's madness. Defeat in war. The bridge across the Bohai Strait, a beautiful idea, but a dangerous one. It would look like a sweeping line of steel and concrete connecting Yantai on the Shandong coast with the shores of Liaoning, not far from Dalian. In peacetime, it means convenience, speed, an economic link between industrial centers. But take a closer look at the map and it becomes clear this isn't just an engineering project, it's a potential threat to China's entire northern maritime system. Bohai isn't an open sea, it's an inland body of water surrounded by land almost on all sides, with only one narrow exit to the Yellow Sea. Everything passes through that bottleneck: cargo ships, fishing fleets, warships. The routes of China's largest northern ports, Tianjin, Qinhuangdao, Yingkou, Uludao, all converge here. Their whole life depends on a free passage. And if that passage is even partly blocked, an entire industrial region becomes practically cut off from the outside world. Now imagine a bridge standing at this narrow spot. Its supports sink into the water, its concrete spans across the channel, one precise missile strike, and the whole structure collapses into the strait. Tens of thousands of tons of steel and concrete fall into the water, forming a real blockage. The passage is sealed, currents stir up the debris, the depth makes it nearly impossible to clear quickly. For civilian ports, that means trade stops dead. For the Navy, it's a loss of mobility. The situation's especially critical for Huludao, home to shipyards and facilities tied to the submarine fleet. Submarines can't just wait until the channel's cleared. For them, freedom to exit to sea isn't a luxury, it's a matter of existence. A blocked strait turns Bohai into a trap, where even modern submarines become helpless heaps of metal underwater. That's why Chinese engineers, together with the military, decided they had to dig, and dig deep. And so the plan for a grand mega project was born. A universal solution. So the Grand Mega Project, the best option for crossing the strait, is a tunnel about 76 miles long, nearly 56 of which will run underwater. Just imagine, that's almost 2.5 channel tunnels. A new world record's on the horizon, the longest underwater tunnel ever built. Latvia, Estonia, Croatia, Luxembourg. These aren't the countries that'll be helping. These are the countries with GDPs that are actually smaller than what China plans to spend on this tunnel. 300 billion yuan, or about $43 billion. In short, the project is massive in scale. You can admire it as much as you want, but how on earth do they even plan to build it? A tunnel over 60 miles long under tons of water. That's no joke. Naturally, China will turn to its favorite method, tunneling with massive boring machines. These are giants with rotating cutter heads capable of grinding through rock, loose sand, and even silt. They drill, reinforce the walls, install concrete rings, and remove the excavated soil all at once. Without them, the project would be impossible, and China will use all of its experience to the fullest. Many Asian and European countries have already tested these machines, but Chinese engineers have mastered them to the point that they can handle even the trickiest ground conditions. The main part of the route will be dug up by a huge tunnel boring machine. But in places where it lacks the power, where the rock is too dense or the geology too unpredictable, the classic underground construction method will take over, drilling and blasting. No, that's not a step backward, it's a strategy. Short and unstable sections will be opened by a series of precisely calculated explosions to create passages of the required shape and depth. When the idea first emerged, the Bohai Strait Tunnel was meant only for trains. No cars, no exhaust, no asphalt. From Dalian to Yantai, high-speed trains would zip beneath the sea, linking two shores now connected only by ferries, fighting fog. The blueprints clearly show separated lines, one for passenger trains, another for heavy freight trains, and a third service tunnel is for maintenance. The entire inner architecture of the tunnel followed one principle: rails and speed. It seemed natural. China's infrastructure has always revolved around railways, the backbone of the nation's transport system. But the idea was turned upside down. Someone proposed, why not make it a combined tunnel, with space for both trains and cars? On paper, it looked elegant, almost symbolic, uniting land and sea, rails and wheels, but the numbers quickly sobered everyone up. Building a 76-mile underwater tunnel for cars would require massive ventilation chambers, complex evacuation routes, and fire systems able to function under high pressure and seawater. The budget ballooned, and the project started to look like science fiction. Still, a simple yet brilliant solution was found. The tunnel would stay railway only, but cars would still travel through it, just not by themselves, but on platforms. Essentially, it's a giant Chinese version of the Channel Tunnel. Cars drive onto special platforms, doors close, and the train dives underwater. Soon enough, you're on the other side. No exhaust, no fire risk. Drivers can relax in a passenger car and wait for arrival. Even though no one will drive through the tunnel, the Chinese insist on making it as safe as possible. Ventilation systems will push air along the entire length, while humidity will be continuously removed. And yes, getting stuck in a 76-mile tunnel underwater wouldn't be fun, at least because there's literally nowhere to go. And yet it could happen. But of course, the Chinese have thought it all through. Every 1,000 to 1,600 feet, there will be emergency exits and rescue chambers connected to the adjacent tube. These chambers will have fire hydrants, smoke and temperature sensors, alarm buttons, and communication cables. Sounds pretty safe. Now let's get back to travel time between the shores. Right now, a ferry takes 6 to 8 hours. Sometimes more if the weather turns bad. Add boarding, car loading, and storm delays, and you've spent up to 12 hours on the crossing. Sometimes the ferries don't even run at all. The tunnel will change everything, winter or summer, fog or storm, 40 minutes and you're on the other side. The train will leave the underground Dalian terminal, dive under the sea, and surface in Yantai long before the ferry even leaves the dock. It's not just time saved, it's a change of scale. The area that once felt cut off by the strait will forget it was ever a problem. For cargo transport, the effect will be even bigger. Containers and trucks now have to wait for ferries, sitting idle for days at ports. The new tunnel will make logistics direct. No marine schedules, no wind delays. Freight trains will depart underwater at precise times. This will ease the burden on ports, speed up deliveries, and make China's northeast literally closer to the rest of the country. But for now, all of this is still on paper. Construction hasn't begun, and the Bohai Tunnel site exists only in plans and models. Geologists have done their surveys, engineers their calculations, but the seabed remains untouched. The authorities are still discussing routes, investors are reviewing budgets, and the strait itself lives on as before, with ferries, ice, and wind. And one last thing, despite all its potential benefits, the tunnel project might still be canceled, completely, for good. Dead Sea. The Bohai Sea today looks like a tired body of water. Once it was full of life. Fish came in schools, coastal villages lived off the catch, and the surface shimmered like steel under the sun. Then came the never-ending wave of Chinese development. Now on its shores lie Shandong Province with about 100 million people, Hebei with over 74 million, Liaoning with 42.5 million, plus the direct-administered municipality of Tianjin with 13.8 million. Altogether, around 230 million people live near the sea. Add to that an enormous number of factories, and the result is wastewater, a lot of wastewater flowing through rivers or directly into the sea. Every year, nearly 3 billion tons of wastewater end up here. It contains everything: factory chemicals, fertilizers from fields, and urban grime. If the water circulated well, it wouldn't be such a problem. But scientists call the Bohai the most closed of China's seas. Water here barely renews, so everything that enters stays for a long time. Heavy metals, phosphates, and oil settle on the seabed. In spring, 25% of the sea surface, about 7,700 square miles, turns bright green. It's not magic, it's eutrophication, the blooming of microscopic algae that drain oxygen from the water. Where fish used to swim, there's now emptiness. In some areas, according to the Chinese Academy of Sciences, biological life has practically vanished. Things have gotten so bad that experts warn the Bohai Sea could become the world's first true Dead Sea, in a literal sense. Every year it absorbs nearly half of all pollutants entering China's waters. Fish stocks have collapsed from tens of thousands of tons to a pitiful 3,000. Coastal cities are trying to fix things. They're building treatment plants, shutting down old chemical factories, investing billions of yuan into restoring the ecosystem. But the sea isn't forgiving yet. Now imagine large-scale tunnel construction. Sure, it's underground, so millions of tons of rock won't end up in the water. Still, any massive seaside project means noise, runoff, temporary ports, dredging, and a constant flow of heavy machinery. In the Bohai Sea, where water already stands still like in a closed bowl, this quickly turns into a problem. Fine particles of drilling fluid and construction dust will settle and make the water dirtier, robbing it of oxygen. There's also a coastal risk. To build terminals and ventilation shafts, they'll have to alter the shoreline. That will change local currents and sediment flows, possibly causing erosion, siltation of shallow waters, and even more algal blooms. It's not a disaster, but a serious burden on a sea that's already struggling to breathe. And there's another risk. The tunnel could one day simply break, which also does not bode well for the marine environment. The Bohai area isn't exactly seismically safe. Earthquakes happen here fairly often. Not Japan level, but still unpleasant. A strong tremor during construction could crack the tunnel, and then the whole structure would be gone, and everything inside would just pour out into the sea. To prevent that, engineers provide for compensators, flexible joints, and ultra-strong concrete built to withstand nature's blows. But still, even a perfectly designed structure lives under constant pressure, and every underground vibration is a test of endurance. So the construction of what seems like a harmless underwater tunnel might end up worsening the sea's pollution. And that's definitely bad news for the few creatures still clinging to life there. They're not going to thank us. The most vulnerable are the spotted seals, also known as Larga seals. For them, Liaodong Bay and the Bohai Sea marks the southern edge of their range, the warmest place where they can still give birth on the edge of sea ice. But the ice now melts before their pups are even born. Global warming, shipping traffic, and oil platforms, all these are destroying their only home. Where female seals once rested, there's now open water and the roar of boat engines. Their bodies have long accumulated toxins, heavy metals from the seabed, and Bohai's food chains are short and poisoned. The Larga seals are still there, but barely hanging on, clinging to the last scraps of clean ice where poachers lie in wait. In 2019, police found 100 baby seals hidden in a shed on an abandoned goose farm in Huifangdian, Liaoning province. 29 were already dead and several more later died, bringing the total death toll to 38 or 39. That's a heavy loss for a struggling species, but the investigation uncovered something even worse. Between 2016 and 2019, poachers had illegally captured a total of 206 seal pups. There are other victims too. For instance, the finless porpoise, a relative of the dolphin. It's also seen in these waters less often than before, though not because people hunt it, but because noise is killing it. Shipping lanes, oil rigs, and construction barges create constant noise that drowns out echolocation, the animal's only vision. They lose their way, get tangled in nets, and die. For a species already on the brink of extinction in the Yangtze River, these losses are a death sentence. Those who come here only for a while, migratory birds, suffer no less. In spring and autumn, thousands of waders used to stop along the seashores to rest and regain strength on their long journey between the Arctic and Australia. For them, the Bohai Sea was like a refueling station in the middle of the sky. But now, most of it is simply gone. The shores have been filled with sand and turned into industrial zones and ports. The mudflats where birds once fed have disappeared. The rarest among them, the spoon-billed sandpiper and the bar-tailed godwit, are now looking for new places. But the eastern coastline keeps shrinking. And when the last patch of tidal marshland vanishes, the creatures will have to either adapt somehow or disappear. As we mentioned, Bohai has become a dumping ground for waste from 4 provinces. Nitrogen and phosphorus flowing from farms and factories turn the water into a soup of algae. Because of that, literally all the fish living in the sea suffer badly. Moreover, due to all the runoff and other pollutants, various mollusks and other small underwater creatures are dying out. Every one of these species will suffer even more if the project goes off track. The scale of the disaster is truly immense. The only hope is that everything will be thoroughly checked before construction begins. Although, do you really think they avoided serious inspections when building the grandest structure in the history of China? Or maybe even in the history of humankind? They definitely checked absolutely everything. Yet that didn't save it from catastrophe. 3 Disasters Dam. Let's start with the fact that this structure built by China actually affected the Earth's rotation. It slowed the day down. Just slightly, of course, by only 0.06 microseconds. But can you even imagine humans building something that massive? This is the Three Gorges Dam, the pinnacle of human engineering. It's literally a gigantic wall built by people, 1.4 miles long, 607 feet high, and made with a mind-boggling 988 million cubic feet of concrete and over 460,000 tons of steel. No other human construction has ever used so much material. It's the heaviest man-made structure in the world. How long do you think they planned, checked, and discussed the construction of something this enormous? 40 years. From an engineering and every other standpoint, they checked absolutely everything, yet that still didn't prevent problems. When the Yangtze was stopped by a wall of concrete, it stopped being a river. The current that had lived by its own laws for centuries now moves by command, slowly and heavily. The water lost its force and began collecting everything it once carried away. Industrial waste, oil films, and sewage from old towns and mines all settled in the reservoir, turning it into a massive settling tank. Beneath the silt lie entire factories and landfills, decomposing and poisoning the river from within. The Yangtze, once capable of cleansing itself, is turned into a stagnant mirror. And then there's the bottom, where silt keeps settling, slowly becoming another threat. The flows blocked by the dam no longer carry fertile sediment downstream. Some estimates say about 40 million tons of silt a year no longer reach where it used to go, and that sediment nourished the delta. The result was inevitable. Land in the delta began to die, losing fertility. Where the river once created life, the sea is now rising. Salty water creeps up the Yangtze, salinizing fields and wetlands. The river that once fed millions is now slowly taking food away. Beneath the surface, quiet decay is brewing. Submerged forests, fields, and vegetation emit methane, a gas far more potent than carbon dioxide. The irony is that the structure built for clean energy has become a source of emissions. The water bubbles with invisible processes, and even the fish that survive here carry traces of pollution in their flesh. And all this after 40 years of discussions, tests, and other works. Of course, the tunnel under the Bohai Sea isn't nearly as massive, but the Three Gorges example shows that no matter how much you plan and test, nature can never be fully protected from human activity. So the route that was supposed to be a revolution in travel between the two most important provinces might never actually come to be.